Hi,
Ah,
Nancy.
hey there, how are you?
Fine. How about you?
Oh, good. Well, it might be just usins. I don't know. Not everybody was interested in reading the nonfiction book. I know that. So, but I thought it would kind of tied in well with the Glass Ocean book, and there were a few details in there that we didn't catch. I guess I should remind you next month is The Only Woman in the Room, and that's historical fiction, Marie Benedict, and it's about Hedy Lamarr and her experiences during the war and how she actually was quite intelligent and helped design something that would help decipher things or block codes or something. Anyway, she was I had no idea that she was this kind of a person. So I think that will be kind of interesting too. But then hopefully we'll be done with war stuff because I'm getting kind of tired of that. Huh? I don't know. So anyway, anybody read any other books from Erik Larson that you remember? Vicki?
I read this one a number of years ago, so I'm probably not going to be able to add too much to the conversation, but I also read his book, I think it's his latest book, The Splendid and the Vile, which is the first year of Winston Churchill as prime minister, which of course was when the war was just really heating up. And then I also read his one called In the Garden of Beasts, which is again about World War II at the very beginning, when the people in Vienna started to realize that they were gathering up and taking away all the Jews. That one was, they're all difficult, but I feel like I learned so much when I read his stuff.
Yeah. They're pretty interesting. Anybody else read any of his others?
I read The Devil in White City. Was that City. It?
Right.
And I liked it. I kept the book. I really liked it, because it had the Chicago Fair, and as I recall, because I read it years and years ago, it was...
We did that for book club, and I think that other one in the Garden of Beasts, I think we did that one for book club 2 years ago.
That was a while back, yeah.
It doesn't seem like I like that one, the garden one. But I did like the other one, The Devil, and it was about that serial killer, as I recall.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, they're all kind of interesting. I really liked Isaac Storm, which was one about the hurricane, I think, in Texas, was it? Galveston, maybe? Anyway, that was really interesting, too. There were always these details in there that you didn't know about, and you kind of thought you knew things, but no, he tells you more. So, all right, I guess one of my questions was, after reading this book, or when you were reading this book, what was one thing that you found out, that amazed you that you hadn't known before? Some new idea or new fact? Elaine, you probably remember something.
I apologize, but I did not read the book, because when we read one book about the one before that led to this one, I had been on Wikipedia about the Lusitania, and I thought, you know what?
You know it all. Yeah.
No, and I'm sure it was interesting. It was just that so I just thought I'd come and listen to you guys.
Okay. Okay. Well, all right.
I didn't know how much the Germans had progressed with submarine warfare before us. That was a shock to me, that they were so prolific with all the subs all around. And the other thing I was interested in hearing, and I would wonder if any of you have seen them. I visited the Churchill War Rooms in London.
Yeah.
They're really neat. and I think that's room 40. I think that's where I was. They're underground in the basement of a building, and they have what the people would have heard when they were actually working there. And they have it all set up with clothing and the rooms where they bunked when they weren't working. And it was really fascinating. So to learn more about what that whole war room was all about was really neat.
Yeah, it would have been amazing to see that. We missed that, but I know it was pretty amazing. So Beth, you had something. It looked like you were going to say.
Oh, well, I didn't read every detail of the previous book, so I don't know. Maybe it was all in there about that room 40, that sub was and everything, and they didn't disclose it, to protect that they knew all that was going on. And also talk about the subs. It said in this book how they were sort of not valued. And then when they saw all that they could do, they really went all out with, many more subs.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just starting to come along, the submarines, and, they didn't know what they had there, but it was kind of amazing. Well, the whole thing, I didn't know anything. I guess I missed something about room 40. I didn't know anything about that. I'm not surprised, but I didn't know anything about that. And then the information on the submarines, they weren't that big, they were pretty narrow and long and only one bathroom. It sounded really awful. Vicki.
Years ago, my husband and I toured the sub that's in Manitowoc.
Okay.
And it's a World War II sub. I wish I'd done a little research before this gathering so I could tell you exactly about it. But if you ever are in that Manitowoc area, it really puts the size of the submarines at that time and the claustrophobia feeling they must have felt. And I always wish at museums like that they would pipe in the aromas.
No, I don't think so.
I know it would be awful. And we have had dachshunds often, well, for about the last 10, 15 years, we've had dachshunds that we've adopted. And so reading about the dachshunds in the subs, I found very interesting how they were in there to catch the rats and so forth.
Oh,
just the amazing life of being a submariner.
And being under, I just couldn't handle that, being underwater. No. Oh, I don't know.
I never really thought of when they launched a torpedo that unbalanced the sub. So they all had to run to the other side. And I thought, well, that makes a lot of sense, but no one ever told me that. No one never thought about that. This was
early on too. I think before they had more technology.
Ballast.
They still do that, but that sounded very primitive to me. But and just the fact that they didn't bathe and they just it's just awful. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to go there.
I was going to comment on the subs too before Sally did. That's what hit me. And I think just the way they could go up and down, and he just kind of decided by looking if he should be up or down or how far he should be. And to think that he could sit underneath the boat and have it go right over the top of him. And then it sounds like they don't ever go that far from shore. I mean, it's not like they're out in the middle of the ocean or anything. They're always just kind of prowling around the shorelines and where the busy traffic is, which makes sense, I guess.
Right.
I hadn't thought of that. And then how much difference it makes to the fuel consumption, whether they're on top of the water or underneath the water. And the whole dynamics of the sub was just fascinating.
And they couldn't go very fast. Was it underneath they couldn't go or on top?
Right.
It was better. I can't remember. But it made a difference, Yeah.
Well, and it was before sonar.
Yes.
They were just cruising along underwater. There was another shipwreck or something. They just ran into it. It was all visual above the water, and it was all by by maps, by charts underwater. And I thought, how they just go under, not have any sonar? That was unbelievable.
Yeah, because they were very brave to do stuff like that. And then the thing about the torpedoes, that so many of them did not activate once they fired them. I think they, you know, many of them were not, you know, just didn't work. And so they didn't know if that was going to be a thing or not. So I don't know. Amazing. So there were yeah.
And it seemed like each sub had its own personality because of the captain. They knew who was aggressive and who was kind of a little more timid. And it just was totally fascinating.
Yeah. So what did you think about the captain of the sub, the U-20?
It was kind of mixed review after he sunk things. Like he felt guilty. He didn't want to watch all those people suffer.
That's
but
true.
Then he went home and bragged about it or something. I don't know. I don't know that they really figured him out.
Well, he was very aggressive, I think they said. And I don't know, was he really supposed to be going after the passenger ships, or was he? I mean, I thought there was an unspoken agreement that they would not sink the passenger ships.
No. Well, that's what he was counting on. You know, he just thought that they would never, you know, torpedo a passenger ship. And even when he got close to Ireland, he put up the American flag and everything, you know. It was...
Yeah.
I was reading The Splendid and the Vile. They were talking about how parents in England would put their kids on boats to send to Canada to be safe from the war. And I think it was one boat that sank had 70 children on it, none of whom were recovered. And at that point, the English government said, no more, we can't be putting these kids out on the water like that. So it put an end to that kind of mass death. But yeah, just
it was. Yeah, well, the Lusitania thought they were safe because they weren't supposed to go after passenger ships. There was an unspoken agreement, I think, during wartime. At that point, they thought that they were safe. And also, why didn't they get their escort? Remember, they had promised them an escort, or they assumed they would have an escort when they got into the war zone or the waters. And what happened with that? What do you think that was all about? Well, was it a conspiracy? Because they did the England was supposed to send out the escort for the ship, and they didn't do that. And
they were all concerned about that other ship, that Orion or whatever that other battleship was.
Yeah.
And that one was going to go out, and then it came back. But I don't think they definitively said why they never got the escort, because the captain kept standing up in front of the whole crew and all the passengers is saying, we're getting this escort, we're getting this escort. And then they forgot it.
But they never sent it out. And that's one reason they thought, or later on, they thought there might have been something to that Churchill had canceled the escort so the Lusitania would sink, and then the United States would come into the war.
That's what I thought, was trying to maybe force the United States hand, because Woodrow Wilson was just so against it. And even after that happened with that, you know, Lucy, I'll say, they didn't get into the war for 2 years.
And that was surprising to me too, because the author mentioned that too at the end. He said, you know, one thing he found when he was researching, he always thought the Lusitania incident caused us, to the United States, to enter the war. And he said, but it wasn't until 2 years later. And he hadn't realized that either. And when you look at the dates, that's what happened. But, so I
didn't know about Woodrow Wilson, you know, going on a honeymoon and playing golf and all that. You know, he was like first grieving and then so he was a little distracted.
Yeah, maybe that was it. He was distracted. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, no, I don't think he really wanted to get into a war with Germany.
Well, a lot of the American public didn't want to get in then either.
Right.
I don't know if their minds changed after this ship sunk or not.
Well, it wasn't after this one so much as when there were more that happened. The submarines were after other passenger ships, and Elaine's trying to say something.
Well, I'm waiting for you to finish. But what I was going to say, because I've been reading other books, they're all dealing with this era, but I didn't think the U.S. got involved until Pearl Harbor was bombed.
And that was the other.
That was Second World War.
That was the other war.
The other war. Oh, we're on World War I. Sorry.
It was
early.
It was the same situation, though. The United States, the country didn't want to go to war until, that happened.
Right.
Okay.
They were isolationists.
I was thinking World War II, but we're on World War I. I've been reading too many World War II books. Sorry.
They're all close together there.
Yeah, but that's interesting because like with World War II, I didn't realize too that the U.S. didn't want to get involved. Okay.
Yes. Are you watching the Atlantic crossing on?
Oh yes.
Yeah, I find myself getting the two wars mixed up too. I have to think about which one they're talking about.
Which one? Yeah, I know. It is confusing.
Yeah, the Atlantic crossing is World War II.
Yeah,
right? Yeah, right. Yeah. And you know what we didn't know on that show, because about Norway, it's like here they thought they were neutral, and it's like, what a shock, But anyway, it's amazing how whether a book or a movie or whatever, how we keep learning more.
Right.
Get more information. Yeah. So, and you realize what you didn't know. I mean, that's always a shock to me. Not like I know, but
Well, and how scary these things are, and what a horrible, the feeling of it. I don't know. It's pretty, it's just really scary stuff. How everybody was being dragged into these wars, it's like, and even if they wanted to stay out of it, they couldn't stay out of it. And anyway, that Atlantic crossing is really, I think it's a really good show.
Yeah, that's good. So what did you think of the ship itself, the Lusitania? Have any of you ever been on a cruise ship? Are they that fancy anymore?
Yes.
They're pretty elaborate, but that was pretty elaborate for its time, the way they described it.
It was the monster. It was over the top, all that gilt, and I couldn't believe it. And then the formal dinners they had to take many clothes so they could be dressed properly for the different meals.
All these trunks people had to carry.
Yeah.
Well, and then one thing that impressed me wasn't good was the first class passengers got embalmed, but all the rest were just put in like lead boxes.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd forgotten that part. And then the mass graves were kind of a shock too, but these were for the unidentified people. There were like a whole bunch that weren't identified, and they buried in mass graves. They were in their own coffin and numbered. They had it very systematic so they could find somebody if they were identified. But that would have been a little unsettling too.
I thought it was interesting.
That chapter was hard to read about what the remains were like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting. There were people that wanted to disinter their loved one and bring them home, and the village just said no. We can't start this. Once we start, it may never stop. And it's just,
I thought
they didn't think it was appropriate.
Didn't one of them insist? And it was terrible. I thought one woman insisted. I thought they did one.
I don't know if they did any. I don't remember the one.
Yeah, I know they've talked about the one. I'm not sure if they did it or not, but I what I recall is the village said no, which made sense because that would have been horrible to go through all that again. But
yeah.
So what did you think of Captain Turner? Did he do everything he could to protect the people on their ship, or should he have done more? Why did
it was too bad that Kennard tried to just blame everything on him, you know?
Yeah,
he said he zigzagged and that he was in the middle of the channel, and you know, he had an answer for them, but they were just trying to blame him for it.
Yeah, I wasn't sure why they did that. That seemed wrong, you know. But any other thoughts?
They wanted a scapegoat.
Yeah.
Yeah. If they blame him, then it's not their fault.
Yeah.
It was kind of sad though, if you thought about it. It was all a perfect storm, you know. They left New York late.
Right.
They were in the fog. If the fog wouldn't have lifted, that submarine guy wouldn't have seen them.
True.
You know, there were just like 3 or 4 things that if that wouldn't have happened. Mm-hmm. Well, then he slowed down just a little bit and faced the shore because his navigator was trying to point.
They were trying
off the shore.
Yeah.
They were trying to navigate with visual off the shore, and if he hadn't done that, the sub wouldn't have gotten him. So it was a perfect storm, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it. Yeah, we're just in the wrong spot at the wrong time. And if he hadn't turned to get that navigational point that they were trying to figure out, the sub could not have caught him, because that was the other.
Right.
The ship was fast, even though they said they were only operating 3 of the boilers and instead of the 4, so they weren't going their 25 knots, which I've forgotten how much that is in miles, but they were slower than expected because of that. And that's one reason the sub, the torpedo was off a little bit too, because he had gauged him as going a different speed. And they didn't think that the ship would sink. I read someplace where the coal bunkers along the sides of the ship, they thought that would protect the main body of the ship, because the coal was all stored on the outside. And they didn't think the torpedoes could, you know, that would protect the ship, and that torpedoes wouldn't get in there that much. But
do you think it made a difference because it was at the end of the trip? Maybe the coal was gone.
Yeah.
I haven't finished the book, but they're just about ready to sink. And
yeah. Well, they both sink.
Yeah, I think we know that.
Yeah.
That was one thing I felt with this book. I thought the whole time you feel like doom. You know, you feel like when I put it down and then I went back to it, I'm like, oh, I know it's going to happen. You know, I kind of had this dread. It was just,
yeah.
And I still wonder, will this set of little kids die, or will this set of, you know?
Yeah. Well, it was so unfortunate too, because they had the lifeboats, but then people had their life jackets, but they went back to their cabin to get their life jackets. And some of them didn't know how to put the life jackets on properly.
Yeah.
Oh, the first class people had better life jackets than the other people too. But then some people put them on wrong, and that didn't help it out at all.
They said some people put them on upside down, and so then their heads were in the water.
It worked.
And also they couldn't use the lifeboats because of the list.
Yeah, the boat tipped. Yeah. Now the whole thing was just bizarre, because, and then there were inflatable ones too. Oh, and then there was so much disaster when they were trying to lower the lifeboats, and they didn't know how to, that didn't work well either. It just got more of a tragic thing, because usually, sometimes I think they thought that the boat would take, hours to sink. And this one sank in like 20 minutes or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was a shock to everybody too. They just didn't have time.
Yeah.
But well,
you guys,
yeah.
I was just going to say, you're all reminding me of why I didn't want to read the book. After knowing a little bit about it, I thought, oh gosh, I don't need this anymore. But oh my, you know, you're reminding me of details. Oh Lord.
It's got so much history. It really is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend it.
I found it very page turning. You know, I got into it and I just couldn't put it down. I had to go through it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting, and he did so much research. I mean, and then even when you read the back with all the notes, there's other stories in there.
Oh yeah,
that he couldn't include in interesting facts in the back. Even it's very, very well researched. He even took a cruise on the Queen Mary 2.
Oh yeah,
like
yeah. What about the advertisement that the Germany ran in the newspapers in the United States just before the Lusitania took off? It was warning people away. And what would you have done if you would have read that article, that advertisement? Would you have changed your plans?
Well, it seems a little crazy to me that they'd go in the first place with all the disruption over in that area. It seems like there'd be some other place to go with not quite all of the wartime problems.
True.
They already had been sinking merchant ships and other ships.
But remember, they thought they were safe, and the Lusitania was very fast, and the subs wouldn't be able to catch them. And yeah, I don't know.
But there were so many of them that were going on business.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no other way to get there. You know, the one guy was selling his books, the other guy was going on business, and that was what they were that was part of their business trip, I guess. You know,
and other people were going back to family and things like that to get reunited, and that was the only way to go. So only a few people canceled out, like 3 or 4 maybe, not 2 did. And I just thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know, knowing what we know now, I wouldn't have gone on this, but but I think I'm surprised nobody else canceled out.
I think the thought of being able to outrun the sub, that's like trying to outrun a cop car. You're just going to run into another one, you know? I don't think it doesn't make sense.
No, but at the time, that's what they thought. That's the way they believed it. Yeah. So anyway, I still think this is an interesting thought about the British Navy was tracking the U-20's location, and it didn't alert the Lusitania. I think later on it did get a couple messages that there was a sub in the area, but the British Navy did not provide military escort for the Lusitania. And why not? And do you consider Churchill in room 40 partly to blame for the sinking? I thought that was an interesting tidbit, and something that I'm still concerned about, because even in the end, Churchill did a memoir or something, and he said, he said it was the Turner's fault that the boat sank. He wouldn't say it was anything he did. So,
I thought it was interesting when they talked about all that intelligence, and they said it's a very fine line, because the minute they know we know, they'll change the code,
right?
Or they'll change what they're sending or whatever. And they were so desperate to keep that intelligence going that they didn't want the Germans to ever know that they had broken the code and they had all this. So the minute they called up the Lusitania and told her to go a different route, then they thought the Germans would know or something. Right. I don't know, but they were really wrapped up in the Germans not finding out that they had that intelligence.
That's true. And that came up again at the end of the book about, this was something else I had no clue that what was it? Germany was gonna. They wanted to get together with Mexico to get them in on it, and then they were going to help Mexico get lands back from Texas and Arizona from the United States back to Mexico. I had no idea that was, and that was another coded message that they could not reveal that they knew about. But
that was the final straw. That's what caused them to declare war.
Right.
They did tell Wilson that one.
Right. He did find out, but they couldn't say where they got the information from. They finally said they got it from Mexico. So, it was, but that was all these undercover things are kind of amazing how that goes on. I guess we don't know what goes on behind the scenes all the time.
I think it's just the same as now. We don't know what all is taking place. It's just part of politics, perhaps, without opening another can of worms.
True. Let's not open that can of worms.
But I think it's lots of things were really going on back then too, probably, that we may never know about.
Absolutely.
I mean, look at the pipeline, the cyber attacks and all that.
Right.
All that's going on.
I know I'm not quite done with Obama's book, A Promised Land. And if you want to know about the depth of negotiations and everything that has to be done to get one little step forward in the government, it's just mind-boggling.
I thought that book,
we get anything done.
I thought that book was wonderful, the way he explained all this, even the mundane day-to-day, but everything that goes on. I thought, I know it was his presidency, but I think it was wonderful for what's going on now or whenever. He was very thorough, I thought.
It was a real lesson in what politics is and isn't, and it was a lesson for me in what politicians have to be in order to be successful at anything, really. And
also how many things go on every day that the president is involved in.
Right.
The day-to-day, the long-term, to me, I thought it was just that one I thought was a page turner, because that was a big book, but I thought, no, I got to keep going.
And that was part one.
What was Wilson's legacy then? Was he known for being anti-war, or was he known? What? I don't know his legacy. I don't know much about Wilson.
Well, I think the whole thing was, the whole feeling was, don't enter the war. The Americans didn't want to be in the war. And then because of other incidents, they finally decided they had to. But I don't really know what was Wilson's legacy. Probably as against the war, because he just didn't feel the American people would benefit from it at the time.
Yeah.
But
I guess you have to read his books.
I don't know much about it. I haven't read his book. Oh no, not another one.
Well, he's League of Nations. I mean, he's the one that put that forward.
He what?
League of Nations.
Yeah. But there was all sorts of information. I didn't look up about Wilson, but I certainly, like you said, looked up a lot about the Lusitania, and then the information about the submarines too. I can't imagine how they were so small and claustrophobic.
Yeah. One thing we need to remember, ladies, is that it was during his second term. I'm doing my research here.
Thank you.
That the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, giving women the right to vote, was passed and ratified. So I don't know how much he had to do with that, but it happened on his watch.
And that's a good thing. Yeah. Finally.
Maybe his new wife got that passed.
been. It might have been. Oh, yeah.
After golf.
After God, yeah.
I think it was all those women working for years.
Yeah. We'll have to look into that and see if she had anything to do with it. But the other thing was about the sinking of the Germany said that they were justified in going after the passenger ship because they were carrying munitions and war supplies on board. And so therefore they weren't totally a passenger ship. They were transporting munitions. And there's something about the salvage of it. They did finally admit, yes, there was ammunition, things on board but it's very dangerous to go down there and try and salvage any of it because of all these things down there that could go off. And they don't know if it was like a minefield. They really don't know why it's so dangerous down there.
Plus it's quite deep. It's about 300
true.
feet. So
that's true. So that's difficult.
That's pretty hard. Diving.
Yeah.
They talked about that ship's manifest too, how at first it was a one-page manifest of what was on board. And then after they left the harbor, the 10-page manifest came out, and then all the munitions and a lot of the stuff was listed.
Yeah.
So I wonder if somehow the Germans found that out.
Oh, they probably did. Yeah, they probably. Yeah.
Well, I thought I made a note of it in the book. It said there was a mystery about the second explosion. Some people thought it was the ammunition and all that, but they said it was probably a rupture of the main steam line under pressure and resulted in a thermal shock.
Yeah. And that's the Captain Turner also said that later because they lost the steering power of their ship. It wouldn't respond after the explosion because he were trying to right it and everything, and they said that would have affected the steering. I don't know what the steam line seems important. It probably did, but yeah, I read that too. But they knew, and the war room knew that there was only one torpedo, but they didn't let that out too. There was a lot of undercover stuff going on.
Yeah.
But why are we surprised?
If I had been a passenger and known that they were carrying munitions, I mean, that wouldn't be a very good thing either. You'd think you were safe because you were neutral, but then you really weren't neutral.
No.
Yeah, so
if I would have known that, I definitely would not have gotten on it.
Yeah.
Well,
hindsight is so good.
I know.
I think it's interesting how war has changed over the years, but yet still there's similarities. Like now armies, and I'm not saying our army, but some armies don't have any qualms about bombing or blowing up a hospital. And in years past, that used to be just off limits. And there's a real evolution of warfare, I think, that I'm sure people in the military understand a lot more than I do, but it's an attitude. It's a whole attitude change about warfare. Or maybe it's going back to more primitive kinds of attitudes about warfare. I don't know. Interesting.
Well, it seemed like there was a code of warfare at that time, that these hospitals and, passenger ships and things were off limits for attacks. And I'm not sure where that came from, some agreement somewhere, but it's not there anymore, I don't think. Yeah. But we need to look that up, maybe. More things.
More war things.
Oh. More war things. Oh, golly.
Isn't that part of the Geneva Convention or something?
Well,
something
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's still going, but I think maybe sometimes they use the Red Cross when they shouldn't be using the Red Cross too,
as a camouflage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that could be.
I mean, why not?
Well,
Right.
Kind of like flying the American flag when you weren't.
Yeah.
All those things. Yeah.
Did you guys remember too that I thought it was really interesting? Some of those bigger ships, was it the battleships, painted the white wake so it looked like they were going faster or something? Did you key in on that?
Yeah.
Because the subs could see and other ships could see, and they knew how fast we were going by the white foam on the forward part of the ship, so they would paint the fake white on there.
Make it look like they were going fast. Yeah.
I thought that was fascinating.
That was very clever. Yeah. And so what does the term dead wake mean? Why did he choose that for the title, do you think?
I wrote it down here a minute. It was what's left.
It was the wake after the torpedo was already passed.
Let me find that.
But while she's looking, I thought it was interesting what they said about the wake from the periscope. That sometimes you could see.
Yes, they could see that. Yeah, they could
see that tiny little wake just from a periscope.
Yeah.
Well, they had a lot of people, like you said, they didn't have sonar or anything, but they had a lot of people up on the mast, watching to make sure they put more people on watch to look for periscopes and things like that. So I guess you had to be really observant to look at that. But that wouldn't have been a very big wake, I wouldn't think, from a periscope. Yeah.
Well, this is what I've looked up. It said dead wake is a maritime term for the disturbance that lingers on the surface of the sea long after the passage of a vessel or a torpedo, a lingering trail left behind on the surface of the water. That was one definition.
After the past, yeah. So why did Larson title the book Dead Wake?
Well,
I think they talked about that the people looking over the side could see the dead wake before the torpedo actually hit or something. There was something visible before it hit.
Yeah.
The people that were hanging over the edge watching.
Well, I took it like everything terrible that happened afterwards, the aftermath of it all left
kind of
behind.
A metaphor, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it's what you're looking at afterwards. Yeah, after the fact. So yeah, a metaphor, that's a good thing. So anyway, we talked about the captain, we talked about room 40 and submarines, Churchill. There's just a lot of history in here that we could do more research if we wanted to. What about that bookseller guy that was taking those, what was he taking? Dickens and some paintings or sketches over to England. Why was he taking the book over? I don't remember.
Wasn't it like priceless and irreplaceable or something?
Oh
yeah, it was like an original copy or something.
And he was just borrowing it from his friend, right?
Somebody was going to sign it maybe or something. Was that it? I think so. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Charles Lorette, that his name?
Yeah. Yes, and he had a bookstore. They had quite a few bookstores. He survived and he went on to have many bookstores in the United States, I guess, too. But so
it was interesting how he did all the detail on people, like the guy with the pink vest or whatever. And that's like Barb, like you're wondering, does the girl with the bow in her hair survive? Or he kind of was planting the seed all the way along for people that may or may not survive, which was a little hard to take too.
He actually wrote a book about the sinking of the Lusitania called Lusitania's Last Voyage. He specialized
Oh,
in
the bookseller.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the bookseller. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I found it interesting too that at one point they said the people that survived or people that lost people contacted the survivors to find out what happened, if they knew what happened to the person they were looking for or that they had lost, and they all kept in touch afterwards. It was kind of interesting, but logical, I suppose.
A bonding situation, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A support group, maybe.
Yeah.
That was, yeah.
I just imagine the time that would have taken by mail to contact everybody.
Oh gosh, yeah.
People were a lot more patient, weren't they?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Well, they had to be.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now, were they able to get mail on and off the ship? They weren't, were they?
Well, they did send. He stopped and delivered mail as they were leaving to some other. I can't remember what. Some other ship. But I don't think nothing came onto the ship after that. No, because they didn't make any stops or nobody.
But nobody intercepted them and got mail or
no.
Like there was
there was telegraph, right?
Huh?
There was telegraph.
Yeah, they had the telegraph. Yeah.
So some important people got telegraph messages, I think.
Ah, well, that's the way you would have done it. Yeah, but it'd be what a disaster. Yeah. So.
Can you imagine people today going on a ship with no internet?
Or no, yeah, right.
No phone, just go for a week or two.
I don't think I don't think they would happen.
I'd like to sign up because I'd like to know who all the other people are that would do it. Unplug.
Yeah, that would be hard.
So would you do it?
I would do it for a week.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I mean, we've been on cruises in the Caribbean, and I mean, we were going with some of our company trips in the 90s, and there wasn't phone then.
No.
There wasn't. You had to pay a lot of money to get internet. So I mean, we were calling people at ports of call. You know, we had young kids then, so it was 30 years ago. We would call the babysitter or whatever, you know, my parents, and so you were kind of out of touch for those days at sea, and it was fine. I mean, but it was before the internet was what the internet is now. So
yeah.
I wonder how many people 30 and under would do it.
No, I
think maybe we're kind of used to not having instant response all the time, but be interesting to see with the under 30 crowd what they would say to that same question.
I think it would be very stressful for them.
Yeah.
They'd probably say, why?
Why?
Why would we do that?
They're
really interesting about.
They're very used to, you know, being in touch and always being on alert.
Cool. Well, we have a lot of people we could look up if we wanted to find out more. Is there a movie? I went to look for documentary like thing. I bet you somewhere we could look up that too.
Yeah. That Charles Loretta is really an interesting character. There's quite a bit out here about him, but I'll see about a movie.
Is his book still available?
I don't know.
Because I thought about that when I was reading it. I thought, oh, maybe that would be fun, a nice filler to fill in some of the gaps of what was happening. But,
a few years ago, there was a traveling display about the sinking of the Titanic.
Yes.
Did anybody else get to see that? It was really fascinating.
Yes, I saw it.
Yeah.
In a museum, I think I did too.
I saw it in Tampa at a museum, and also in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, they have a museum, a Titanic museum.
Right.
And it's all in the shape. The front of it looks like the Titanic.
Oh.
This says there's a movie called Sinking of the Lusitania that came out in 2007, subtitled Terror at Sea. That's the most recent one. There's a silent film in 1918, The Sinking of the Lusitania.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Can you imagine the music? Yeah.
Probably all that black and white footage of them leaving New York.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and you know, something else about when they were leaving New York, I did not realize the cruise ship itself built bleachers. So people could come down and sit on the bleachers and watch the fancy people in their hats and everything boarding the ship. And I thought, geez, that was, you know, who would have thought?
In those days, yeah.
That was, well, it was before entertainment, you know, TV and all that kind of stuff. So maybe, maybe that's what they did. I wondered if they
goes to show people were watching The Rich and Famous for 100 years or more.
Always, yeah, that never changes. But
it's funny.
I had no idea that they built bleachers so other people could come and watch them. Yeah,
that used to be a big thing. I mean, you know, entertainment-wise, I suppose for people that live there. It's kind of like red carpet now, you know.
Yeah.
Who are interested in that. Yeah.
I was thinking, see your people off and then a fashion show.
I think so. Well, does anybody have any more wise comments to make about this?
You're editing us now. They have to be wise.
They have to be wise.
Well, no.
I'm glad we read it. I really, yeah, or almost read it. I'll get through it.
Why are you glad we read it?
Why?
Yes.
Oh, it just has so much history and all this fascinating stuff about the subs. I mean, I just kind of think of them as kind of like sheepdogs or something, you know, or it's just a whole different part of the whole war that I never knew anything about.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any other comments?
The museum that you mentioned, Sally, where the sub was that the U-505 in Chicago at the Museum of Science and Industry, or another one?
I actually saw the war rooms in London.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah, you can actually,
that sub,
that's a museum.
The sub that it's in the Museum of Science and Industry. I was on some Caribbean island, pretty far down south, and I can't remember exactly which one. And they said that there were some survivors and they had to stay there and be isolated for a really long time so that, you know, to protect, so the enemy wouldn't find out something. I forget what, but it was a whole tie-in with that U-505 that I didn't know.
Oh.
Huh. I was talking about the sub in Manitowoc.
Yeah.
But that is a World War II sub.
You can see it from the Badger. You know, we took the Badger over to Ludington, and you can see it from there.
If you're interested, my husband is interested in all things naval, so I took him there on his 50th birthday. So it's been many years ago. But it's really worth it if you like those kind of things. It's worth a stop there.
Yeah. It's always one of those things we drive by and say, "Oh, I'd like to stop." And the husband says, "No, we're going here." I said, "Okay."
He didn't have a choice. I arranged it all.
That was good for you. Yeah, I like that kind of stuff. So that's great. So. Yeah, well, no, I'm glad we read it too. I just, I thought it filled in a lot of the gaps and gave us a lot of information. Like you said, Barb, lots of history there. And it was, and I think Larson does a really good job of putting the history in with the people and keeping you engaged and wanting to keep turning the pages. I think he's a good author, and certainly does a lot of research. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One thing, I wish they had a better map at the front.
Oh,
because I kept looking and hoping that they would have the places they were talking about, and they didn't. Most of the time they didn't.
Yeah. So, I always think they should do that with all books. There should be a good map of whatever it is, and there should be a character list. Yeah. So we keep track of the people and what happened to them. So that would be
one other strange thing was that Kennard did not know that they made known that you could go over Ireland to get to Liverpool.
Yeah.
And they were not informed of that, which would have been much safer.
Well, yeah, because the subs wouldn't have been expecting them to be over in that direction. Yeah. There were a lot of, like Sally said, it was the perfect storm. They were all everything just fell into place, and they were in the wrong place at the wrong time, depending. So, well, I think this is all I've got right now. So,
well, thank you.
Thanks, you guys.